Philippians 2 verse 5 reads, "Let the same mind be in you that was in Christ Jesus." When we model after Jesus, we live a life of empowering others rather than powering up ourselves. Let me draw your attention of what I meant through the life of Jesus. In John 13 verse 1, now before the festival of Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and to go to the Father. Verse 3, Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and he was returning to God. God the Father put all things under his power. In other words, he was powered up. Jesus could have used this moment to show his power up on his disciples. In other words, leveraging the power you have, or the knowledge you have, or the authority you have in order to dominate or control somebody. That's what we do as humans, don't we? Power corrupts. The idea that because I'm stronger, I have more influence, I can control you and dominate you and leverage my power in order to gratify my desires comes from a sinful nature we have imbibed from the Garden of Eden. Here you find Jesus standing before his disciples, filled with all power. He had perfect knowledge of their future. He had perfect knowledge of their hearts. He had received all authority. He had all power from God. He had before him a captive audience of his committed followers. He could have leveraged every bit of that he received from his Father for his own advantage. But Jesus taught and modeled that power given is not the power to power up, but to empower others. In John 13:4 to 5, we read, he got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was tied around him. Foot washing was considered a necessary part of showing hospitality to guests, but was a menial task that Jewish slaves were even exempted from. Instead, Gentiles were hired to do this job. In verses 12 to 15, after Jesus washed the feet of the disciples, he teaches his disciples that he modeled this behavior before them so that they follow his footsteps as being a servant. The word servant means to serve others, to lift them up instead of powering up. In verse 16, we read, no servant is greater than his master. The Greek word used for servant is doulos, meaning to bind, so it literally means one is bound to the master. So the idea that doulos gives is not free to act on his own. In Philippians 2, verse 7, Jesus emptied himself and took upon himself the form of doulos. He was teaching us to make a shift. Instead of being servants of the first Adam, be a servant of the last Adam, not to power up, but to empower others. So let's make a shift in our attitude to be his servant, to empower others. Be blessed.